Hey, we had a great time at the youth games opening last night. We're going to Creighton today. We're going to spend some time here this morning, obviously. Flew in from Ottawa on Saturday. Go back to Ottawa next Sunday or Monday. We'll figure that out. It's going to be a busy week.
So first off, thank you for helping organize. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me. It really means a lot to, I know you look after a lot of places. So you being here, territory. Yes, it's very large, but you being here means a lot to us. And it really shows that you care about your constituency, so thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
We are here with Mr. Gary Vidal, MP for the Desnethé, Mississippi Churchill River District. It's my understanding that you were actually born in Meadow Lake and you have a history of public service and that you were, for many years, I have from 2011 to 19, the mayor of the Meadow Lake. And you became a MP in the 43rd Parliament, 2019, winning with a 42% vote, and you are previously an accountant. Is all of that correct?
That is absolutely correct, yes.
Awesome. Thank you again for being with us here. A little bit about the constituency that we live in. We're here in the Ronge, a part of this constituency, which is 70% Aboriginal.
Correct.
And one little anecdote, we have the highest Métis self-recognition, I believe, at 16%. So a lot of people might think of Manitoba, but Saskatchewan in this riding, very Métis strong. So just a couple questions. This is, in my understanding, one of the largest districts in Canada, the third largest, actually. So it's a very diverse riding.
And depending on who you talk to or which website you look at, it's either the second or the third largest district in the provinces, not including the territories. So if you look at Wikipedia, we're the second largest. If you look at Elections Canada, we're the third largest. So.
Okay. Regardless, we're large.
Big.
We're
343,000 square kilometers. So.
And one man here.
And you know what? The story I always tell to put it into perspective for people is it's slightly smaller than the country of Germany. So it's about 9,000 square kilometers smaller than the country of Germany. We have 70,000 people, and Germany has 83 million in that same space. So that's a little bit of an interesting comparison.
Whew. So that's a lot of area to administrate from a one-chair operation. I know it's part of something larger. But how do you plan to get representation from such a diverse constituency?
Well, one of the things we did right away is just recognizing the challenge. One of the things that I recognized right away is that it's just not possible for one person to be in all those places as often as we would like to, as often as we need to serve the needs of the people. So one of the first things I did was hire Dion Peets as a constituency inclusion coordinator, we called it, and his sole purpose in our team is to be that outreach person, to go out and do as much as he can as far as talking to folks, making relationships with folks. When I'm in Ottawa for 3 weeks, he can be making connections in the riding and kind of be my voice, my ears, my feet on the ground here when I can't be here. When we're here together like we are today, we will get out and do it together. So that's one of the very first things we did, is to make sure in essence, if you think about it, we tripled our ability to be out because I'm here at best half the time, and having one more full-time person is actually 150% of the resources that we would have had. So that was the first thing we did, and then we're going to kind of monitor from there.
Nice. Statistics are always easy to be in your favor when the core sample is small, but right. I love it.
Yeah.
So going a little bit more into that diversity, there's such a huge range of interests for people in this constituency, because it does dip into the south, because it does branch all of our north, things like farming and oil and gas, we're going to see more in the south. It creates a little bit of division between the south and the north, whereas up here, being so indigenous, things like treaty rights, poverty and addiction, that is a huge portfolio for, like you said, you've got some help, but how do you reconcile those great divides among the North and the South?
I think it's really about how you treat people. It's about how you engage people, and I think our goal and our commitment is to go out and engage people in all of those different things that you talked about, whether it's in the south part of the riding, the north part of the riding. We want to get out and we want to engage people. We want to some of us, we honestly have to go out and learn what the challenges are. We don't have all the answers. We don't understand all the challenges. But if we go out and talk to people, and the word is listen to people.
Yes.
We've got to do more listening than talking lots of times, and help people be part of the solutions. Allow them to be part of the solutions rather than telling them this is the way it should be. Our goal is to get out to as many communities as we can. We want to talk to the leaders, whether it's kind of the First Nations leaderships on the reserves, or the municipal leaderships in the urbans, or the Métis settlements. Just last night I talked with Glenn McCollum, the Métis Nations president, and we're going to get together and talk about some of their challenges. And we've got some really good relationships with people at some of the tribal councils, so they're helping us engage people in their world. And I think it's go out and listen, engage people, try to understand what the challenges are, and then go advocate for them. That's my job, is to represent everybody, not just this segment or that segment. So as part of that, we have to learn what those challenges are, and we have to build trust with people. And that just comes from having respectful relationships.
I think that's a great answer, well worded. And we're touching on like these town hall-esque things. You said you've been here. This is not, even though you were elected in 2019, it's not your first time here as MP.
And this is our second time to Ronge. There's going to be some places we got to get to for a first time still, because it's like you said,
far north Athabasca, maybe something.
Which some of that stuff's going to be stuff we probably have to do in summer, because in summer we have a longer stretch of time where I'm not going back and forth to Ottawa. Like right now, from now to the end of June, I'm kind of here for a week, and then I'm in Ottawa for 2 weeks. I'm here for a week, and then I'm in Ottawa for 3 weeks, so we have to kind of strategically do what we can in those 1 week segments, where in summer we have a longer stretch where we want to go do some of the further north trips and get up to some of those really far away places, so to speak, and get into those communities and engage those folks as well. The interesting part is I've had a number of people from some of those communities that have come to Ottawa, and I've been able to get to know them there.
Really?
So there's more than one way to do this, right?
Yeah.
So
I think that's well worded, because we have a history of anywhere north or isolated, there's a little bit of a paternalistic relationship with the Crown and with the Federalist Society, where people come in and say what is best. So the stance on listening is appreciated, and I think it will serve you well.
So the other thing, maybe just to add to that a little bit, the other thing that I've one of the opportunities that has been presented to me, and this is being appointed the Shadow Minister for Indigenous Services Canada. That gives me the ability to have a voice for some of the people in the north as well. It gives me the opportunity to be kind of at the table and to have access to things that I wouldn't have just as a member of Parliament. It's just giving me the opportunity to represent people at maybe a little bit higher level than I even hoped for. Now, the challenge that comes with that, instead of just worrying about Northern Saskatchewan, I now have 630 First Nations across the country that I'm trying to be responsible for engaging as well. So it just gives me, it's a greater opportunity, but it's also a greater challenge.
Are you up to it?
Absolutely, yeah. I have a great team of people, and I'm thrilled about the opportunity.
Nice. So looking at the results of the election, you definitely pulled ahead in the South. But the North was a little more split between the Liberals and the NDP. And some research on Northern and Indigenous communities shows that there's a lack of activation in these federalist levels of governance. So do you have any plans on how to enact the North to be on your side or to be more engaged in democracy?
I think it comes back to what I said before. You actually have to go and build relationships with them. I think the advice I'm getting in my experience as the mayor of Meadow Lake and dealing with the First Nations communities directly around us, and we had a lot. Right? I mean, we did sports together, we did school together, we grew up together. As the mayor, I was very closely connected with the Chief of Flying Dust. In fact, Chief Norman was one of the first people that endorsed me when I decided to pursue this whole venture. So it shows that we have some history of building relationships, and I think what's important is that you show authenticity, that you show you really care, that you respect begets respect, the old saying, and I think that's what we have to try to do. And I think if we go to those northern communities and we build those authentic relationships, I really honestly believe there's an opportunity for us to overcome some of that historical stereotype that conservative thinking people or conservative political people don't care about. I think that's just wrong, and I think when I challenged people in the campaign, you say you kind of like me, but you wouldn't typically vote conservative because of whatever background. And when I challenged people, they honestly didn't have a real solid answer to the question. I said, so sometimes it's just that, well, this is the way my parents did it, this is the way.
Yes.
And that's true of so many things in society, right? So I think my goal, both in Northern Saskatchewan and across 630 First Nations and Indigenous communities across Canada, is to say, I think we got to build authentic relationships and show that we're real people, that we care. Do we have all the answers? No. Is there going to be challenges? Absolutely. But when you have authentic relationships with people, then you can have those difficult conversations and try to find the answers to the challenges.
Do you think there's more sustainability in creating policy or programming that when you're the start of it, the inception is listening, like you said, then people have a stake in it, right? They're less likely to feel emancipated from it because they've had their input, and I think that's. I mean, it's the old saying, right? If you've got some skin in the game, right? There's value to that, right? And so if you listen and allow people to be part of the process. There's lots of good ideas out there probably that we could incorporate into the solutions if we do it together.
I think another thing that you said is wise, that we have to address the way that we consider not just parties and programs but policies, like to make sure that there's not an inherited narrative that we have, because political parties over time can change.
Absolutely.
We have to be policy based, right, and not necessarily hard in our policy or in our identity to different parties.
Right.
Again, well worded. You mentioned this. Is that the Standing Committee in Indigenous and Northern Affairs, INAN, that you were speaking of with the 630? First Nations?
I will be on that committee. So because I've been appointed the shadow minister for Indigenous Services, one of the things that comes out of that is I will automatically be a participant on that INAN committee as well.
Okay.
So my federal shadow ministers on Indigenous files. So Jamie Schmale, who's the shadow minister for Crown and Indigenous Relations, and Bob Zimmer, who's the Northern Economic. Sorry, I don't even remember the exact title. And then we have another fellow that will represent our party on a 12-member committee, which is the INAN committee.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. Really quickly, can you elaborate? Because not a lot of people might know. What is a shadow minister? Are you trailing the minister? Like, what does that mean?
I have to admit, when they appointed me the shadow minister, I had to ask the same question. So,
are you the bad cop to the good cop?
Basically, our job, my job as a shadow minister in this case, is to actually observe and make sure that we hold, in this case, the Minister of Indigenous Services, which is Mr. Mark Miller. Our job is to make sure we monitor their comings and goings and their doings and hold their feet to the fire to make sure they're serving the people in their capacity the best they can, and just literally shadow what they do and make sure we hold them accountable for doing the right things.
Okay, wow. So going back to INAN and your participation in it, this week we have... Which, for the record, it seems to be bipartisan. It has members from
all the committees all the committees do. Yep.
Awesome. We have an event here this week in the Ronge for missing and murdered women, Indigenous women and girls. I know that this sounds like it's a new appointment or a new part of your political career.
The committee thing?
Yeah.
We literally, we just found out the committees last week, and we haven't even met yet.
Oh, wow. Okay, so then speaking a little more generally about some of these issues that have come up in the North, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about your position or the party's position on some of these emerging crises.
You know what, I guess it depends on which, there's a number of them, right?
Of course.
At the committee level, one of the things that we'll do at the committee level, and like you say, it's a representation of all parties. So there's Liberals, there's Bloc members, there's NDP members. Some of the committees will have independent members. Those are places where we can drill into those things. Those are places where we can call witnesses. Those are places where we can kind of dig into the crux of them, and so at that committee level, we will develop a work plan as a group. So again, it's across parties,
which is great.
You have to kind of agree to the work you're going to do. And we've had some informal conversations. A lot of people don't see what goes on behind the scenes in Ottawa when the cameras are off. We see the House of Commons and we see the battles that go on during question period.
Yes, we do.
When the cameras are off, the members are going back and forth across the aisle, so to speak, and there's conversations. So we've had some conversations with the Liberal members on this committee already, just building relationships and talking about some of the things that we might be able to accomplish together. And so you'd be actually surprised at some of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes sometimes, as far as people just finding ways to work together. And I would suggest to you that the INAN committee is one committee where there's the greatest opportunity to work together that way, because there's a lot of commonality on facing the challenges that we face in those communities, and there's a lot of commonality within the parties to say, those are things that we want to work at together to find solutions to, right? It's not so partisan, maybe, if I could. I think that's one of the things I actually enjoy about the opportunity of serving in this role and on this committee, is that I think it allows us to actually work together to look for solutions and not have to be as partisan all the time. And that's kind of my nature. I want to solve problems. I want to find solutions to the challenges we face, and if that means I have to work with my counterparts across the hall, that's okay with me.
I love that, personally.
So, I've made it a huge effort already, and I've instructed the people in my office in Ottawa that we need to build relationships with those people that we, especially in the Indigenous Services fund.
Yes.
Just to put this into perspective, the minister's office is literally below mine in the building and where my office is. So I've had conversations with some people in his office. Said, okay, when I stomp my foot on the floor, I'm coming down because I'm coming to try to solve a problem, right? And
that's great.
It's humorous, but at the same time, I'm saying, I'm not going to stand up and criticize you all the time because I know the challenges, but how can I help you? And one of the stories I would share with you if you have time is when we dealt with the Makwisagayakans suicide crisis back in that was already in October. It was like literally right after the election. And that might have been early November, I guess. It was early November. And, the first thing we did when the Makwisagayakans folks reached out to us, because we were their first contact, we reached out to the minister's office and we worked with him to kind of have to bring some resolution to that. And to his credit, when he made his announcements in Saskatoon about the funding that the government was going to, he invited me to come. So as his critic, he invited me to come and participate in the process, and I think there's a sign there that says, okay, there's a willingness to say, let's work at solutions together. Realizing we still have to hold their feet to the fire, we still have to hold them accountable, but
there's a way to do it such that you aren't excluded.
Let's give you an opportunity to be part of the solution first before we try to stand up and embarrass you, so to speak.
Well, I love that issues should be first.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's good to hear. So, one last question, and this is a little bit different, but this is just coming from me as a trained biologist and wondering about resources and economy. So in December, Premier Scott Moe talked a little bit about the possibility of looking into small modular nuclear reactors for Saskatchewan. With the history of the Deep Geological Repository not really going over that well, and looking at a bunch of candidate communities and not having that, I know they're two different things. Just wondering if you have any thoughts about that as a potential economic engine, or...
You know what, I haven't dug into it a lot. That's kind of a thing being floated by the province. And my understanding, which is really limited, I'll admit, is that there's some maybe significant potential to that for our future, and there's a number of problems that maybe could be addressed with that, but I think it's a ways down the road still. I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow.
Okay. Fair enough. And that's the end of my questions, but is there anything else that you'd like to add? I know we're about to go into more of a public-facing style meeting with other members of Ronge. Is there anything that we've missed or that you want to add?
I think we've covered it pretty well. I would just probably want people to know that we're there for them if they, we're there to serve everybody, not just the people that voted for me. I think that's one of the misconceptions of kind of the political world, is that people only represent those. That's not the case. My job is to represent everybody in Northern Saskatchewan, and we've put a team together that's willing to do that. In the days of technology and the things we can do, we're an email, we're a Skype call, we're a phone call, we're whatever kind of messages that are out there nowadays, we're that far away all the time, and we have people willing to help when there's challenges.